Hello, everybody. That's another one of our monthly get-togethers. And boy, what a great get-together person we've got here, which I'll get to in a second. All presented by the Human Animal Bond Association. And I encourage you to check out the website. You know, Becky Mosser, our speaker, who I will introduce in a moment, wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the Human Animal Bond. You wouldn't be here watching if it wasn't for the Human Animal Bond. You wouldn't care, for those that are veterinary professionals, about getting race certification if it were not for the Human Animal Bond, on and on and on. Human Animal Bond Association is the original Human Animal Bond organization. HABA, the initials, humananimalbond.net. That's all you have to do is to go to the website, and I hope we are a membership organization. So the hope from me, and I know Becky feels this way too, is that you consider joining to support all the work that we do. Presentations like the one you're about to hear, presentations at the major veterinary conferences sponsored by the Human Animal Bond Association, and work that we do speaking to and communicating with veterinary students. And if any of you are veterinary students, thank you, thank you. If any of you are technicians, thank you for the work that we do. Speaking of which, now I will get to the reason why we are here. It is an honor, and I do mean that in every sense of the word, to introduce Becky Mosser. Becky Mosser is a registered veterinary technician. I'll read the stuff a little bit, but I'm going to ad-lib a little bit too, because she is a good friend. Becky is a registered veterinary technician, graduated from Central Carolina Community College in Sanford, North Carolina in 2017. I said that because that way I make you younger. She has enjoyed a diverse career background. Now get this, large and small animal practice. Okay, people do that, right? Ms. Mosser is currently a private consultant and co-founder of Veterinary Advancements. As a private consultant, she assists veterinary-based startups. I could list those startups. Some of them aren't startups anymore. They're off and running in part because of this woman right here, who is a Energizer battery herself. I don't know how she does it. In addition to that, yes, she herself is involved with the Human Animal Bond Association. She is a professional responder with the ASPCA. It's a field investigator and is on the response team. She's the co-host of a podcast called Veterinary Viewfinder, Making Sense of Pets. I've been on that podcast. The few podcasts that make no sense, I am sure, are the ones that I'm on. Otherwise, they all do make a whole lot of sense. She is the host of a clinician's brief podcast. Ms. Mosser serves as a member at large for the Society of Veterinary Medical Ethics and is a former board member of NAFTA, as well as the North Carolina Association of Veterinary Technicians. She is the first one when COVID hit to say, you know what, our profession, meaning the veterinary profession, is taking a hit here, and we want to help. And she has raised money to help individuals who have suffered, or family members that have suffered from COVID or have lost their jobs because some of the practices have suffered. She has been a super fundraiser for a very good cause, and that is to help all of what we do. And I hope she talks a little bit about that tonight. But she's here mostly to talk about ticks, but she's not alone. We also have Dr. Erin Casey here. She is in the house, 2010 University of Georgia, College of Veterinary Medicine graduate, professional services veterinarian, covering Virginia for, there she is. I mentioned her name and she's here.
Hello, everybody.
Boehringer Ingelheim Animal Health. Now, forget about me. I am going to make myself disappear because we're going to hear about Lone Star ticks. We're going to hear about tick disease and tick disease prevention. Becky, take it away.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Steve, that was probably the best intro I've ever gotten. And I'm so lucky to actually be here with friends and be among friends. Both Steve and Dr. Casey are very good friends of mine. And I am so lucky to have folks like them introduce me because boy, do they make me sound smart and accomplished. I will say this, guys. Dr. Casey was quick on and off in the camera, but she is a brilliant. You should read her background. She is absolutely brilliant and funny and smart and all the triple threat you can imagine, but she is brilliant, and she is actually here to make sure that we get questions answered if we have them. Any questions that you might have about products, that's going to be directed more toward Dr. Casey, because I work with BI, not for BI. And so what we're here tonight to talk about is truthfully Lone Star ticks, not specific products. We know what products we love. We know what products we work. I dress my shirt's blue. I color code to my product, but feel free to ask away to Dr. Casey, because that's what she's here for, and let's put her to work. Also, as we go through, if you have a question and she has some input on it, or I'm talking and she has something to say, she'll pop her little camera and face on here and jump in, because I'm here for the interaction. I love talking to you guys. I love this presentation.
And I'm jumping in here just before you start to say one thing that's really important. All of you want to stick around to the end of this, not only because there's a cool ending, because what is good as a talk about ticks without a cool ending? But beside that, there are prizes. We're going to have a raffle, and I don't want to leave that part out. Okay, I go away again until the very end. Bye.
Okay, we won't leave the raffle prizes out for sure. So I definitely lost my train of thought there, but that's okay. We can jump in and get rolling here on the ticks Lone Star specifically. So what we want to talk about today is sort of that expanding threat and what the concerns we have specifically when it comes to the Lone Star tick can be. So we're here for a good time tonight. We're here for a good time, not for a long time, right? That's how the saying goes. But so I want to make sure we cover those health risks associated specifically with the Lone Star tick. Sometimes everybody just thinks about the black-legged tick or the Western black-legged tick that is transmitting Lyme disease, and that's where we get really hung up. But we are definitely overlooking, and in general, just the need to know what kind of ticks we're dealing with in the first place. And then to kind of recognize that geographic expansion, and not just so you're like, no, it's happening, but so you know how to tackle it when you're having these conversations with your clients. I'm going to talk about why year-round tick protection is necessary. You guys know 100% it is absolutely necessary. So Amblyomma americanum, that's your 50 cent, that's your big money word when it comes to the Lone Star tick. So all of these different conditions, all these different diseases, we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth later. But each and every one of them is carried by the Lone Star tick, but not just that the Lone Star tick can carry any one of these, but can carry a combination of these at any one time. So, you know, a lot of times when we're talking about heartworm disease, we are, you know, talking about like one mosquito heartworm disease. Well, truth be told, one tick, and we can have multiple lifelong preventable diseases. And you'll hear me say that over and over and over again if you ever listen to me talk about ticks. These are conditions that we really truly cannot cure. We can treat the symptoms, and infection can happen, flare-ups can happen, and so the need to prevent these diseases is more important than ever. I will also just call your attention to Cytozoan felis. And I will say that because it's the only one that we talk about in cats, and we don't take a deep dive into it. But if you live in a part of the country where you see Cytozoan, you know it is an incredibly deadly disease. It is incredibly tragic. When I used to teach lab techniques, I would teach my students that the first sign of Cytozoan in cats was death. So it's a sad story, but it's true. And so we tend to think, you know, a lot of times our clients, I don't need this kind of prevention because my cat doesn't go outside. And if you can count the number of times you found a tick in your house, and especially if these are cats that coexist with a dog in the house, we really want to make sure everybody's on protection, because it doesn't matter anymore where you are. There are ticks in all 50 states. But when we're talking specifically about the Lone Star tick, we're talking about 30 states, so 2/3 of the country. And that's all the way back to 2012, which is fairly old data at this point, you know, that we can update. And if you can just sort of extrapolate from this, you would imagine that chances are we're seeing them all across the country. And we're going to talk a little later about where you can find maps to look at specifically where you are, and to see exactly what ticks, what diseases, and how many are being transmitted in your area. And so you can take a look at this map and sort of get a good idea of what's going on in your area. But the number one reason when we think about why this is happening and why we see this expansion, I mean, there are a ton of reasons, right? I always argue and say, I don't think it's an argument. I don't think I need to say I argue. I always venture to say that Hurricane Katrina and then the later hurricanes, but starting with Hurricane Katrina, I mean, I feel like we really completely changed the face of parasitology across the country. We regularly now, but especially starting in that kind of landmark, ship dogs all over the country. And, we see these areas in the country where adoption rates are like, I mean, I have a friend in Seattle who told me that their local shelter's adoption is like 48 hours. Like these dogs are just like in and out the door. They can't even get comfortable. It's like the best news ever. And they're calling to get dogs sent to them and shipped to them from shelters across the country so that they're able to fill the need within their community. But because of that, we're transmitting and passing all kinds of ticks and bugs and diseases around. But when we're talking to our clients, we have to find a little bit more relatable point than that specifically. And if you're watching today and you are a pet parent and you're not in the veterinary profession, what we know is really important for you to know and to understand is that these ticks are coming along on deer. And when I'm talking to my clients, I don't know anyone that will say, we don't have any deer in our area, because the white-tailed deer population is estimated to be about 30 million. And so there really is only a few places in the country where you can't find any white-tailed deer, which I think is kind of, I mean, maybe the taxes are too high. Maybe it's just too dry there. I don't know what it is. They don't like the desert, but these guys hang out. Basically, the majority of the United States is going to have some type of deer population. So when I'm thinking about clients who are resistant, or if you're having a personal resistance to how much does my pet really need this, it's important. I kind of go back to like, do you have deer? Do you have possums? Do you have mice? Do you have rats? Do you have foxes? Because all of these types of animals are going to be the types of animals that will transmit ticks into your area. But the deer is the white-tailed deer is one of the number one that will do it. So for the veterinary population, we talk specifically about the technician, but for anybody who is in healthcare, or I would argue anybody who has this information, you understand the risks and then you can educate. And the ability to educate is the ability to advocate. And so if you've ever heard me speak before, I have this, I can't even call it a soapbox anymore. This is straight up podium that I get up on, because when I was in clinics, I struggled so much with feeling like a salesperson when I was trying to talk about preventatives, when I was trying to talk about various treatments. And I don't know why that is. Like, I don't know what creates that sense of tension inside for so many veterinary professionals, or that the clients may receive it that way or feel like we're just trying to sell them a product that we're making a big buck off of, or that we make a lot of profit off of, which is not always the case. And then I started to really think about, like, well, if I don't tell them this, and how many circumstances do I come across in a clinic when I'm talking to clients on a daily basis that tell me they don't have this information or they don't have this knowledge, it becomes really essential, in my opinion, to make sure they have it, to know that I'm the person that they're paying, that they're trusting to give them the education and give them the information that they need. And if I don't do that, it will open the door for them to come back and say to me, you didn't tell me. You didn't tell me my pet could get this lifelong condition, that we would only be able to treat the symptoms. You didn't tell me that pill you were trying to sell me would do all of that, or what the risks were. And sometimes we know we did tell them, but it didn't sink in or it didn't hit them. And so we have to think about our responsibility. Educating isn't just telling. Educating is giving knowledge that can be retained and used, right? So when I think about successful education, I think about you walking away tomorrow with actionable tangible items and conversation and information that you can employ immediately, right? So if our clients aren't leaving with an actual education, then we're missing out on an opportunity to advocate for our patients. It's a little true and false here. Are ticks insects? Oh gosh, you guys. Ticks are not insects. It is true they are not insects. So ticks are arachnids. And I feel like this is part of why maybe they creep us out so badly. Is just, yeah, right? Like we all know arachnophobia is a legit real thing. Well, the nymphs and adults have 8 legs, therefore they classify and qualify to go to the spider family reunion. They're in the spider family tree. They're spiders. So I think this contributes to why we just inherently don't like them. But if not, it's because they look like this. I mean, I will personally argue and say we couldn't have found somebody with a little bit better skin. But I guess that's like a super close up of skin that I don't want to knock it. I don't know what mine looks like that magnified. So this is a Lone Star tick. Everybody kind of assumes it's because it was found in Texas or originated there, or you may know that it is named because of the whitish spot on the female scutum. And note there that I say the females, because the scutum, or that hard outer shell, on the male does not contain that dot. So there's a little graphic of what they look like if they don't have that dot going on. And it's important to know and to identify these different stages and to identify these different types of ticks because of the conditions that they carry, the diseases that they carry. So we want to make sure we are taking ticks off in the clinic, or if we're finding ticks at home. If we don't know what it is, there are a lot of really cool resources out there. You can now, Dr. Casey, you're going to have to weigh in here if you know this one. Where is it you can send the pictures and they'll identify the tick? It's like literally like tickidentifier.com or something like that.
Is it tickencounter.org?
Yes,
That's
tickencounter.org.
my favorite website ever.
Some amazing people who love ticks more than even us got together and made a website, and they can help you identify these ticks. This is really important because of the conditions. And on top of identifying what they are, we can go back a step and try to make sure we just don't get exposed to them at all. So I went too fast. Making sure that we know where ticks live and how to avoid them. I think folks, for whatever reason, I feel like people have a tendency to think that ticks are like in the trees and that they kind of like fall. I don't know if people really think about where they're necessarily picking them up, but ticks spend most of their life on the ground. So they're mostly going to be under the leaves and in the mulchy kind of damp, moist soil, because that's what keeps them alive and what keeps them warm when it gets cold out there, until they can get those blood meals. And so when we're in tall grassy areas and foresty areas with a lot of debris, ground cover, that's where we're going to be the most at risk. So for you guys in the veterinary profession, images like this, do you know, true or false? These are the types of things I think we really need to be leveraging on our social media, on our newsletters, putting little flyers in the exam room, because we don't have time to have conversations about every single thing that our clients need to know about in every single visit. But what we do know is we can, give these drips of information along the way so that they have those seeds of information. Then when they come in on their clinic on the next visit, they can say, so I saw this thing about, so for example, like I live at the beach, we have ticks in the sand dunes. It's where they live here because we don't really have forests, and because they live on deer, like we talked about, they fall off where deer eat. Well, deer eat the grass in the sand dunes, right? So a wonderful thing for me to be a conversation starter here at the beach is to use my social media, use my newsletters to say, did you know sand dunes are one of the high risk areas where you can pick up ticks? First of all, you shouldn't be walking on the sand dunes, FYI, but help your clients understand where they're going to be at risk with all of these educational tools, TikTok, yada, yada, Snapchat, whatever you crazy kids are out there doing, because education is out there and you guys should be on the forefront of it. Helping them understand where they're most at risk is getting in front of the problems in the first place. Fun fact, I'll call it fun. It's pretty awful if you ask me. The Lone Star tick is actually what we call a questing tick. And that means they just sort of hang around with their arms sticking out and grab onto whatever comes across. Like they can just sort of grab a hold of them. Quick little brush, doesn't only takes a second. Grab on, get their blood meal, and as soon as they're done with their blood meal, they drop off. So one kind of misconception that we tend to find is that, people will think, well, my dog never has ticks because I don't see ticks on my dog. But what you don't realize is that they're not going to hang out. They're not like fleas where they're going to create a population and stay there forever. They're going to get on there, take a blood meal, fall off. However, with this fun little guy, not only will they grab on as you go by, they detect carbon monoxide, they detect movement. So that tells them you're there. They actually actively and aggressively come toward their host. So they will literally charge their host for that blood meal. So it doesn't matter where you are if you're nearby. So even if you are staying on the path, you can be attracting ticks in the area through your movement, through your breathing, both of which are very important. So you have to know how to do these tick checks, these preventative measures, and then to prevent them in the first place. Aggressive tick chasing just completely freaks me out. The next thing we kind of think about when we talk about ticks and the differences that we see that are important for our clients to understand is just the sheer nature of the way that they reproduce. They lay hundreds to thousands, and I mean, I'm talking up to 8,000 eggs in a laying. And if you are really super interested, please YouTube tick laying eggs sometime, because there are some real cool videos of how that happens. And I just walk away feeling really grateful that I am not a female tick, because that is not a life I want to live. And then that's it. They 8,000 eggs and they're done with life. But now we have all these little babies all in one area just ready to burst out and get that blood meal. So what will happen when we call it these right conditions? The right conditions is these thousands of eggs have movement and carbon dioxide and an indicator that they have a blood meal. So they hatch out, they get it, and they can swarm and get through socks and get all over in minutes. I mean, so fast. And they're so super tiny, you don't generally feel them. We call them seed ticks. At least here we do. I don't know if you call them something different, tell me in the chat there. And when I think about these tick blooms, right, or these tick swarms, I think about our like the Great Pyrenees. Like I think about even our golden retrievers, or heaven forbid, like a Poulier. Could they get through like a Poulier? Could they get through the little dreadlocks? The fact is that we are not going to get all of these ticks off of our, it's going to be like almost impossible. And that removal and the ceasing of the ability to transmit saliva so that they can no longer transmit disease is essential to the prevention of disease. So when we think about how much exposure can happen, like if I told you like, hey, you could be exposed to 8,000 of anything that could make you sick all at 1 second, you would pretty much do anything you could to avoid that. So if we can get with our clients and help them understand how quickly these things can happen, how they happen, how to prevent them, and how easy it is to prevent them as opposed to the yuckiness that is the infestation itself, pictures like this go a long way. Go for that creep out factor, get them educated, and you're advocating for that pet for prevention. So we talked a little bit about this already, but we look at the lifestyle of the Lone Star tick. And again, we've got that adult female. She's gonna feed on that host for several days and then drop off. She'll lay those eggs. They call the clutch of eggs, thousands at a time. And then we've got the larval stage that's going to emerge. And these are going to be your ground feeders, okay? And we call the Lone Star tick a three life cycle, a three host tick. I'm sorry, I'm reading every word on this page. And the reason is because they're going to need 3 blood meals to get all the way to adult. This first one here, these are the guys we find, on their toes, in between their toes, in between their pads, and are often easily super missed, right? These are the guys we think of as the seed ticks. And they can feed on any 3 of these stages can be a dog, but we're going to often find them to be like little tiny animals that stay close to the ground. But again, doggy toe beans will do. Then they take that blood meal again, drop off and molt into the nymph stage. So we're going to then go through that entire process again, molt into an adult. And when we talk about this adult and this whole life cycle, it's important to think about and keep in mind the fact that this can take 2 to 3 years. And the reason it can take 2 to 3 years is because they're going to not hatch and molt and get their blood meals and move on in their life stages until they're able to do so. These guys are built for survival. So we want to make sure that we know we're not going to get in front of this game. We want to make sure we know the risk factors, where we're going to find these guys, and do everything we can to avoid them. But at the number of thousands, they're at high risk all the time. And one of the major things I think that people don't realize is that any temperature, a lot cooler than we really probably think, but above 45, and I have seen numbers as low as 38, we see evidence of tick activity with at least with the Lone Star tick and then several other species of ticks. So it's an important thing to send out reminders to your clients on, in the middle of December when you have kind of one of those unseasonably warm days, that it doesn't have to be full-blown spring for ticks to come out. They're just going to sense those warmer temperatures, not to mention everybody's out and about enjoying that warm day, and they know that they're going to be able to get their blood meal, moving on to their next life stage. So we see tick activity all year long, and that's a huge misnomer we've got to break up for our clients and for folks out there who still believe that to be the case. Even after one good hard freeze, we will still see tick activity in most parts of the country. So the next thing we kind of talk about are some of these kind of scarier diseases that the Lone Star tick can transmit to dogs after they have taken a blood meal. There are several, and so we can't cover all of them, but we're going to kind of take a superficial dive into a handful of them. And so Ehrlichia is one of the first ones that we look at. There are several species of Ehrlichia. We're looking specifically at E. wingi and E. schiffinsi. Okay, so E. canis is not included in the Lone Star tick exposure panels, but either way, we do see a lot of the same clinical signs. So we'll see things like thrombocytopenia. It will see things like swollen joints. Always see dogs that we call just kind of ADR, right? They are lethargic. They don't want to eat. They might be vomiting. They might just be down and out. So we can have these really sort of vague signs that can make it a little bit hard to put our finger exactly on what's going on quickly. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, this doesn't affect dogs as severely as it does some other species of animals, including people. Rocky Mountain spotted fever is actually a condition that can be deadly to humans. It can cause dogs to have high fevers, vomiting, a list of different types of symptoms, again, sort of vague. Not one that we test for regularly in the clinic. This is something we'd be sending out what we call PCR for. But it is something that we want to keep our eye on and be thinking about because it is something that's rather dangerous. And just having an idea that it's in our area, when we think about conditions that humans can be exposed to, for our clients and for our clients' families, it's really important for us to make sure that they understand the risk factors that some ticks can transmit diseases to humans, and Rocky Mountain spotted fever is one of them. And should their dog carry in a tick and then not have it prevented on it, that would be able to, end the tick's life, and you have that tick just kind of roaming around the house, then, we may regret not having a preventative on board. If that client gets infected, we want to know that if the humans are affected, we want to know that we did everything we could to keep the pet from being the vector that kind of carried that tick through the doorway and caused the problem. Tularemia is another one that we see not very often, but is just on the list of conditions that can, for our pets. And again, tularemia is one that we don't test for. So when you guys are testing on our 4DX, when we see those dots, these are things that we're going to be thinking about side of the conditions that we might not see the dot for. So when you're thinking like, boy, this really feels tick-borne, it looks tick-borne, but the 4DX is negative, don't hesitate to do those tick PCRs and get those diagnoses. So real quick, just some, further information about these guys and the seriousness, that you'll see. And just at the end of the day, when you kind of think about these signs and you kind of go through them and think about just anorexia, fever, lethargy, when we talk about Rocky Mountain spotted fever, in this case, again, we were talking about swollen joints and sore just bodies. In some severe cases and very scary cases, we can actually get things like hemorrhage, seizures, a lot of just scary symptoms. But overall, if you just think about the fact that we can prevent our pet from ever feeling any of those types of diseases or conditions through prevention, it seems like a no-brainer to me. So when we really start to think about the effects of those diseases and we get honest with our clients about what the results can be, I think it's important to have the conversations with our clients in a realistic way, make sure they know the risk factors. So again, they're never coming back to you and saying, well, I didn't know. For a lot of you guys, I talk about the PCRs and what we're doing about it and what we're doing out there. But for most of you guys, you're doing what a lot of clinics are doing because the PCR testing is not cheap. Go back, Becky. So you are probably looking at blood work, looking at the signs and symptoms, and then saying we're going to treat symptomatically because outside of the 4DX tests or what we're running in practice, we'll treat it symptomatically. There's nothing wrong with this, and it is obviously a standard that a lot of clinics do. But for one, I think we miss out on knowing how much tick-borne disease is really out there. So I think our numbers are slightly skewed because we don't get to take a deep dive into them on a regular basis. The other thing is that for those of you that are watching and can remember when doxycycline became, $7,000 a bottle overnight or whatever it was, we don't have the option to just treat symptomatically. It becomes even more important for prevention because we are not going to be able to guarantee. I mean, we've had IV fluid shortages, we've had opioid shortages, we've had essential medication shortages in the recent past. And so I think we really have to emphasize and focus on prevention even more than ever when that's the case. And again, we really want to emphasize, and I think, when I'm doing this in person and I get to see all of your beautiful faces, and we're talking face to face, and I ask, how often are you finding them on exam? Very rarely are we finding the tick actually on exam when we see those blue dots. These guys are taking that blood meal and they're gone. And if you've never seen tick paralysis from like a scientific standpoint, from a medical standpoint, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. From a client owner standpoint, it is terrifying. And when I do these again and I get to interact with my audience and to learn more about you guys, what I find is this is something that several of you guys have experienced in clinic. And I see about a 50-50 percent of dogs that actually make it out of this and dogs that don't. And if you can't find that tick to remove it, you can't end the paralysis. You can't stop the paralysis. Generally, as soon as you find the tick and you pop it off within 24 hours, you have restored movement. There may be some, residual neurologic effects. They're minimal, but when we can't find them, in many cases, the pets don't make it. The pets don't get to go home. And, this paralysis, it can be due to the paralysis, right, affecting their breathing apparatus or their brain and causing them to die, or it can be secondary where we can't find the tick, the clients can't treat, it becomes a money and a quality of life issue. And then these dogs have to be put to sleep. And for all of us, that's an incredibly difficult situation, but let alone in our brain, if we're thinking this is all because of a tick, as the people who do the aftercare and work with the clients and help the owners through that time, it's devastating to think that could be the result of a tick. So for us, again, I want to emphasize that we can see more than one blue dot at a time. We know that these ticks can have more than one disease at a time. And I think that's another important point that our clients don't necessarily realize. This tiny little guy just doesn't seem that threatening. But when we give them a list of conditions that this pet could be exposed to, that this pet could suffer from and be re-exposed to, prevention seems like a no-brainer. Okay, gotta talk about humans. It's the grossest thing I talk about, right? We're not here to talk about people. But when it comes to the Lone Star tick, we kind of have to, because there are an entire tick wheel, as you can see here, of diseases that the Lone Star tick can transmit to humans. And I touched on this already, right? It's really important to understand and to not mislead clients to say, you know, preventing, first of all, your dog cannot transmit these diseases to you. So if your dog gets Lyme disease or your dog gets Rocky Mountain spotted fever, they can't give it to you. That's not how it works. And of course, what we know is that if a tick gets on a dog, even if they are on prevention, it's not going to kill them unless that bite actually happens, right? We know about different brands and different repelling things and different things like that, but we know that the effects are actually going to happen with the ticks from actually that contact, right? And so we don't want to mislead and say like, oh, if there's prevention, there's no way a tick can come near your dog or get in your house. So we don't want to mislead clients, but we do want them to understand the dangers that are associated with just ticks in the environment and the higher risk that they would be at if their pet is not on a preventative, because when that tick has that blood meal and falls off, it could be right there in that backyard, and that next life cycle could happen, you know, right in their backyard, and the client could be exposed. So I won't go through these too much and go into too much detail about these. I will just say that, like, first of all, bourbon virus it's not nearly as fun as it sounds. I thought when I first saw it, like, oh yeah, I had bourbon virus and the wine flu, and no, it's not fun. It's a fever. It's it actually, similar to a lot of tick-borne conditions in dogs, causes joint pain, inflammation, can affect your heart. Ehrlichiosis, similar to dogs and Rocky Mountain spotted fever. We talked about this. I actually kind of get into a kind of bummer spot here, and I don't like to take down the mood too much, but to really emphasize, I guess, the importance, the reality, to kind of bring a contact point to it. About, I guess, a year and a half ago, going on 2 years now, my ex-husband actually passed away at 44 years old from complications from Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And so that brings such an intense reality, I think, to people when you're thinking about just a tiny little bug and what you would assume to be like a healthy, you know, middle of life, you know, thriving individual can actually lose their life. In North Carolina, I know that I've heard of at least 2 or 3 cases of really young children passing away from Rocky Mountain spotted fever as well. So this is one that it is deadly. And I have met people before who have had Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and they do get flare-ups of it occasionally. And it is something that they feel like they deal with the rest of their life. Tularemia, again, we see similar effects that we do into dogs, and Starry is the southern tick-associated rash illness. So for me, it stopped sounding fun at rash, and I was like, I don't really need to know anything more about that. But it is a fever, rash, tick-borne illness-induced human condition. We don't see this in our pets. That just basically sounds terrible. And then a lot of you guys have probably heard of the red meat allergy, so the alpha-gal protein. The Lone Star tick actually carries the alpha-gal protein, which can cause a reaction. It's a sugar protein that can cause a reaction to basically meat proteins. And so if it does not swim or fly, you then have an allergic reaction to it. And it can be of varying degrees, everything from, you know, hives or upset stomach to full-on anaphylaxis. And it is the most bizarre thing, because you're just going through your life normal. You can eat red meat, pork, no problem. And then you get this tick bite, whether you realize you got it or not. Again, this isn't one where we're seeing like a big bullseye or something that we're looking for later. You may not even know you had that tick bite, and now you're allergic to red meat. So we really want our clients to understand that importance, protecting their dog because they're at high risk. And if you really get, you know, to your clients to that really like ick, gross out factor, they're like, please tell me what I have to do to get you to stop talking and to get my pet protected. I do just want to pause right here to acknowledge this dog's curly ear. I don't think this is a motion thing. I think that dog's ear is actually curly like a little Frito chip. And I want to meet that dog and I want to smooch those ears. So I felt like it was worth a little moment to acknowledge. Speaking of ears, look at this guy. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, that I would give you the information. This is where you want to go. This is what you want to look at if you're trying to see the area that you're in, or perhaps an area that your client is going to be, just to see what the risks are associated with the Lone Star tick in that particular area or with any other ticks. Because if you know what's prevalent in your area, you know what disease conditions you're exposed to, as well as what you need to be looking out for. And the other point to me, the thing I think of is that for clients, this is really engaging. This is pretty fun. So if you give them something to look at, something to engage with, if you ask them, what's your, where does your daughter go to school? Let's take a look in their area. Just give them something to sort of be engaged and play with. Can be a lot of fun in helping them learn. And it just kind of beats that whole, like, I don't know. I hate saying death by PowerPoint because I'm like here with you guys just like talking at you, but I'm using visuals and I'm trying to make it engaging and fun. When we're just throwing packets at our clients, it's not a way to retain information. And again, like I said, if it isn't education that sticks, if it isn't information that sticks, then have we really done what we need to do to create the environment of advocating for our patient? These websites are great ways to do it. The other one, as you can see, so that one's CAPC, C-A-P-C, capcvet.org. The other one is the cdc.gov because they have tick maps. And so you can take a look and see the prevalence and where their expansion is happening. And if you're just like a tick geek like me, it's really cool information. And again, just a visual like this, something cool like this in your room or on your social media or newsletter, it's a great way for your clients to stay informed about the risks, specifically when we're talking about the Lone Star tick. I went backwards. I just kind of want to keep talking about these maps. The next thing we want to make sure that we're covering and we just kind of think about actively is the tick removal process. So we want to be really careful not to use our hands and to expose ourselves inadvertently to disease. So we want to make sure we are taking the tick as close to the skin as we possibly can and pulling straight up and making sure that anything that's left over, like mouth parts, are removed. But we don't want to go digging in there. A lot of times clients, I don't know why, here's the thing. What I know about heads in general is they mostly stay on. Ticks can lose their head. It can happen. Specifically with the Lone Star tick, they have really long mouth parts. So they will actually get these really long mouth parts deep down in on that bite. So sometimes when we remove them, those mouth parts can be left behind. And that's what we'll more frequently see. We don't want to cause major irritation or infection to the skin by digging. Clean that area. Again, identify that tick. Make sure you're getting rid of it, bringing it to your veterinarian. If you're in a veterinary clinic, my favorite thing to do is to create a tick hotel or a tick morgue or a heebie-jeebie jar, whatever you like to call it, and to kind of collect what you're finding in the area, because there's nothing better to educate clients with than a jar full of bugs. Nothing gets the point across like a jar full of bugs. So again, make sure you don't crush it. Make sure you're not exposing it. Wash your hands. And then we kind of want to revisit that year-round tick control, because I think you guys realize and but we have to help our clients understand that it is not just a black-legged tick that we're worried about, that we're worried about ticks of multiple kinds and that ticks that we haven't been worried about in the past. And so we want to make sure that we're aware of what's in our area and the diseases that can be transmitted and know how to avoid it, know how to keep our pets safe. Make sure we know where dogs can be infected or most commonly infected, so they know how to avoid those areas. And, make sure you're kind of hitting and touching in on that whole, who else do you have in the house that we need to make sure is protected? And, making sure your clients know it's just not what it used to be. There's different ticks, there's different diseases, and we see them. There's an educational opportunity and letting them know not just what they're at risk of being exposed to, but when they're at risk as well. Because again, and we talked about this for you guys, we can break up these misconceptions. We can help our clients understand. When we do that, we have less infected pets. And that's the goal. We've got to get through those clients. So remind those clients that they're small, they can be easily overlooked, and make sure that they know where to check for them that they might overlook them. So inside the ears, even on the gum line, between the toes, skin folds, lip folds, anywhere they can get on the pet, they can hide. So we want to make sure that we're looking and we're feeling all over, and doing that every time our pets are outside in a high risk area, as well as being on prevention. Again, those clients are going to be only worried about the deer ticks. They're not going to be worried about other diseases and Lyme disease if they haven't been educated and told about it. And so that advocating part comes in by making sure that they know that there are a lot of other risks that they can be exposed to. Make sure they know when these ticks are going to be active and where they're the most active. So that vegetative area, that grassy, leafy debris area, that's going to be one of the #1 places. I always see those really cute videos where there's like, someone is, we don't do it here at the beach. What is the word? You rake into like all the fall leaves into like these big piles, and then these almost always Labradors or Weimaraners, I don't know, go charging. And I mean, it looks like the best moment of their life. So I'm not saying it's not completely worth it, but when I see it, I'm like, I immediately think about how many ticks could easily be in that pile of just like kind of damp, wet fall leaves all in that big pile. But it does look like a ton of fun. Make sure those guys know how to get those tick checks done and they're on preventative, and make sure they're recording it so we get to see it. Just for your clients, help them know, again, getting those ticks off of there as soon as possible is one of the most important things they could possibly do. Because we know that ticks, we're finding diseases can be transmitted faster than ever. And we're learning new things about these diseases all the time. And what we know is prevention and the least amount of exposure time is the best way to prevent diseases. And, it is so fun. We see these dogs off leash on the trails and they're running and they look like they're having a great time. But really, truly, those dogs become more at risk by being off trail. Remember, you've got this questing tick chasing you down. So we want to make sure our clients understand the importance of sort of avoiding those types of areas in general and sort of sticking tight with you and not getting themselves into trouble in the first place, and even in their own environment, such as their yard. You guys know it's such a serious health threat. Tick-borne disease, again, I think it's something that we have to really stop thinking from a standpoint of being able to treat symptoms as the importance of preventing them. Because what we know is we cannot guarantee medication anymore. We can't guarantee the ability to treat anymore. So in any time that we can prevent and not have to tap into our treatment resources, it's going to be the best thing that we can do. And when we're having these client conversations, and it says right here on this slide, we recommend preventative measures. But for me, I really try not to use the word recommend. I really try to encourage my teams and the people that I work with to say, first of all, celebrate those -4DX tests. Celebrate when they don't have an infection. Get excited and then say, here's what you need to make sure next year you come back here with the same results. We would hate to see, Fluffy come down with one of these lifelong preventable diseases. Do you subscribe to our YouTube page? We do videos about stuff like this all the time. Whatever it is, have that conversation and give that resource to them in a way that's digestible and in a way that, they know and understand that you're the professional and you're the expert. And so, recommendations can leave room for error and can leave room for decision making that doesn't need to be had. Straight up, this is what we do. We send home a year of prevention with all of our patients. So we're excited to see you guys back with another negative test. Boom. And that's how it goes. Because again, you are the expert in the area. And make sure that they know what they're doing. I'm not gonna lie, we hear these funny stories about people who, take their tick preventative, maybe it's a topical and they like hang it from the leash. They've given it orally. We kind of chuckle and, oh my gosh, clients or whatever, but I think that anytime that those mishaps happen, they are on us because we haven't educated and ensured that the client has all the tools that they need to be successful. And that's our job. So make sure we're taking a step back, even though we know flea and tick topics can seem like they're very, superficial and that we've had them 900 times before noon. But the fact of the matter is, it might be the first conversation that anyone has ever had with that client about it, or in a way that they can retain and engage and learn, and make sure you're leveraging multiple opportunities that you have throughout the year to do just that, because everything that you do to educate is what you do to advocate. That's my favorite dog. I hate to say it, sort of. I've got 4. She's my very favorite. My podcast, and I will say this. Steve mentioned the veterinary industry giving tree. So my folks that are in the veterinary industry, we are currently so honored to be a part of the Bright Minds award nominations with the Bridge Club. And so if you have an opportunity to check out the Bridge Club Bright Minds and give a vote for the veterinary industry giving tree, we would be very grateful. You can also follow us over on Facebook. And we take the opportunity every year at Christmas to take donations and give those donations to industry members who need it. I want to make sure I take an opportunity to thank Dr. Erin Casey with Boehringer, who took the time to be here this evening to make sure I don't say anything I'm not allowed to say, to make sure your questions are answered. So you guys, I think you can send chats to me. I don't know how the chat works on here. I think you can send them to me if you have questions. If not, you see my email there, so you can send them along, and I can send them to Dr. Casey. Steve, what do you got? Any questions about Lone Star ticks? What do you think?
I do have some questions. So people can reach you in many ways, and they have reached out and asked some questions. And if you want to ask questions, friends, do so. Just type your questions in for Dr. Casey and for Becky Mosser. First of all, Becky, wonderful presentation, really.
Excellent
It was
job.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know about you, Dr. Casey. I've seen Becky speak many times. It gets better every time, I mean, she's very, very good.
Absolutely.
But she's
Oh
not
gosh,
hearing
you're
one.
getting more and more expensive, Steve. Every time I got to write you a bigger check, right? I can't have any more of these intros from you.
It's true. So I know you want to do, and you just tell me when you want to do the giveaway that we could do. But I do have a couple of questions. You want me to ask those first, or do you want to do the giveaway?
What do you think, Dr. Casey? Let's ask the questions, and then let's ask one question, and then we'll do a giveaway, and then we'll do more questions. Ask your favorite question.
Okay, and friends, if you have any questions, you can type them in here. But the questions I have so far include, but are not limited to this. Tularemia, I thought, was spread by rabbits. That's the question.
That is a very good question.
It is spread by it's not the only way it's spread, but I think you can get tularemia from rabbits. I have very limited rabbit medicine. I know that they break their backs really easy, and I know how to feed them. I know how to syringe feed them syringefuls of food.
It is.
So I think what they're asking, I'm not sure, is it still a tick-borne disease that rabbits can get and people can get and dogs can get, but does it come from ticks in the first place, particularly Lone Star ticks?
Absolutely. So rabbits are definitely susceptible. So you all think of it as rabbit hemorrhagic fever. I remember this so clearly from veterinary school because I ended up going into biosecurity. And I remember my professor saying, this could be the next bioterrorism agent. It was fascinating to hear that. And then I ended up in biosecurity and cooperative threat reduction for a hot minute. So rabbits are susceptible, humans are susceptible, tick-borne disease, we can get it from rabbits. So kind of yes to all of the above. I was just taking a quick peek at the CDC website. So it can infect animals and people, but rabbits, hares, and rodents are especially susceptible, often die in large numbers. We can get it from many ways, including tick and deer fly bites. So it sounds like just kind of an awesome disease all around as far as transmission. So
Sounds like a good time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think a lot of times that we don't cover the transmission in animals where we can't prevent it, like in the example with the rabbit, it's not labeled for use in rabbits, but it's a great point that you pointed it out. So thank you for whoever brought that rabbit information about. I haven't touched a rabbit in 5 years.
Right. And I suspect it wouldn't be as likely in a pet rabbit, which leads me to this next question. Then you could do the giveaway. The next question from JT is that so Lone Star ticks, and I can hear the question going this way. So Lone Star ticks can live indoors? The is not a part of the question.
So technically, probably no. Like if your tick came into the house, well, I don't want to say no because like nothing's impossible. If it's found its way into like say a planter, into some soil, into a, I don't want to keep saying the M word, guys. I'm sorry if I'm triggering you. Moist. Some people don't like it. If it could find somewhere in your house to live in those conditions, yes, in theory, it absolutely could because all it really needs to live, right, is blood meal, oxygen, and a safe environment to go through its next stage. Most likely, it would not find that environment that it needed to be friendly enough to go to its next life stage. But there's nothing to say it really couldn't. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me, and it's true. The brown dog tick is the one that we think of for like kennels and the ones that could do all 3 life stages inside because they love the dogs. Lone Star tick need to be a little bit more squirrely. They prefer other hosts. I have to smile at my dog. Sorry about the squeaky toy. He knows the second I'm on camera and talking. But Lone Star tick, I will say, like, I find them in my car. Like, they will jump into my car from me and will be walking around. I'll come get them a few days later. They're looking for me. So they're pretty
questing. They're questing you.
Where do you live?
She's in Virginia. 1 in 15 dogs, we learned last night, 1 in 15 dogs has Lyme disease in Virginia. So we know the tick population up there is intense.
Yes.
Because you asked if Dr. Casey has seen my lectures before. Oh, as early as last night, she has.
Well,
shall we do the raffle? Shall we raffle off our?
Yes. I've learned not to ever accept a ride from Dr. Casey. But yes, we should do the raffle.
There's an offline story about that. All right, Miss Julie, our lovely assistant, is hanging out. She's going to let us know. What I'm going to do is pick a number 1 through 17, and we will see if that aligns with anyone who is here right now. And that is aligned with your registration number. So I'm going to start first with the number 8. So Miss Julie, who is registrant number 8? She's looking.
It is Krista England.
Krista England, are you here? We're going to wait and see. Somebody has to watch the chat. I can't see the people chat.
Well, should we find Krista and give her the prize either way?
I don't know, Miss Julie, do you have contact info for her either way?
So hopefully I do, but if she could send me an email at info@humananimalbond.net.
And you can find that where you went to register tonight. Just go right back to that website, right?
Yep,
and
exactly.
There's a contact me spot. So no problemo there. All right, next, Dr. Casey, I'm gonna make you pick it.
Drum roll.
Okay.
What are the prices, by the way?
Yeah, surprise.
Are you giving away tips?
So I want to make sure I got them right, Miss Julie. I'm gonna let you tell. It's a cooler and a tumbler, right?
That is correct. Very nice ones.
Really nice.
Really nice.
Really nice. Swag. All right, Dr. Casey, what you got?
All right, so the dog that was throwing his toys against the door and whining a second ago, that's Simon. He turns 4 on August 11th. So let's go with number 4. I shouldn't honor him. I shouldn't honor him doing that behavior.
Always you should honor him. Always you should honor. Simon is lovely.
Simon's special.
Constance Crumley is the winner.
Who?
Constance Crumley.
Constance Crumley. I feel like that's a familiar name, Constance. I feel like I know you. I hope you're here. I hope you have contact info. We'll say it again. It's info@humananimalbond.net, or just go back to that link you registered at tonight, and you can find the contact me info there. You can also, if you need to, my info's up here. Just take a screenshot, reach out. We'll get you your stuff. Don't worry. Stop yelling at us. What else do we got for you guys?
Any other questions?
Yes. So this is sort of my question. Are we paying too little attention to ticks and tick diseases? And would you go so far, this for both of you, so far as saying that veterinarians need to step it up because we have an epidemic and tick disease goes undiagnosed all the time?
I kind of think both of you have heard me get on. I get a little crazy about this one. Okay, I get a little fired up because I think that's my exact point about lifelong preventable disease, right? Like this isn't just like, oh, you got a cold, you did a bad job of washing your hands, and now you got a little sick, or you ate a bad piece of fish, and now you have, whatever. Like this is lifelong pain, misery, discomfort. If you know anybody who has a tick-borne disease, most people know somebody with Lyme disease. It's not good. It's not nice. It's not a pleasant way of living, and that's their entire life. And if you ask those individuals, if you could have prevented that for, say, I mean, truthfully, what, $30 to $100 a year, depending on what what you're doing. Yeah, I probably would have. The idea that we wouldn't. And again, my fear is we're getting into a place in the medical industry where we can't guarantee treatment. And so I think we have to go above and beyond to look at how we can prevent diseases, because the treatment situation is getting a little scary. So I'll let Dr. Casey go, because like I said, I get fired up about that one.
I do too. So I think it's twofold. I think we need to, on the veterinary side, step it up. We need to get over the fear of feeling like we're selling a product or something like that. We need to educate our clients why this is important. And this is all layers of the staff, from the moment you walk in the door, talking to the CSR, to working with the assistant, the technician, the doctor, kennel. Everybody needs to be on board with the same message. I also want to give a shout out to our medical the human people on that side, because we partner with those that are MDs. So we need the veterinary side and the human medicine side to work together to have an eye out for these diseases and recognize when a human is ADR and what those clinical signs could mean, and how we can do some improved diagnostics on the human side to help with figuring out where these diseases are going.
Excellent.
I agree with that. It's a good point.
Yeah, I think you both made very good points about this. I think we're past out of time. So Dr. Casey, thank BI very much for doing this, supporting the Human Animal Bond Association, and most importantly, the Human Animal Bond. And this is a topic both of you said, and I personally agree, not often enough talked about. And as Becky pointed out, over and over and over and over and over again, preventable. What's wrong with us? We can prevent this. And Becky, you know I'm a fan. you're a superstar. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you. And Steve, thank you for all you do for the Human Animal Bond. I mean, from everything from serving to on all cats and the Human Animal Bond Association to educating all the time on your media platforms. It's incredibly important what you do. And so I'm always honored to be on panels with you guys. Both of you individuals are brilliant. And honestly, you guys out there who took the time to watch tonight, just taking time out of your day to learn, to do better clinical care, to do better by your patients. I respect and honor you guys because you're the ones out there doing it. And so thank you for everything you do, and thanks for being here tonight.
Perfectly put. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, I guess she is gone.